Testing. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet.
Good evening. I'm Steve Fox. Right now we're sitting in the living room of a friend of mine. Now I've got a certain amount in common with this fellow. We both went to the same college, back east, Dartmouth College, and we both do essentially the same thing for a living. We make stories for television, but there are a couple of rather major differences between me and this guy. For one thing, his name is Ace Space. Now, the simplest way I can think of to describe Ace Space is to say that he's kind of a hip Charles Kuralt. Kuralt, of course, is a CBS newsman who travels around the country in a Winnebago equipped with film gear, making stories about interesting people, stories which are then later shown on the Walter Cronkite News. Ace Space does basically the same thing, travels around the country. Since 1971, he's logged more than 250,000 miles. He travels in a Dodge van fitted out with $40,000 worth of videotape equipment, making stories about weird people. The difference, of course, is that Ace Space's stuff doesn't make it onto the Cronkite News. Ace Space is actually Dana Atchley, Ivy Leaguer with a master's from Yale, former college professor who decided back in '71 to hit the road, to begin traveling with no idea of what would happen to him next. This evening, we're on the road with Ace Space somewhere in Marin County. Let me ask you something. Do you think it's fair to compare you? Is it an apt comparison, Ace Space and Charles Kuralt?
I'd say that there are definitely certain things in common. We both travel, we're on the road. I think we both have a certain optimistic interest in the grassroots things that are going on in America. And one of the most important differences primarily, I'd say, is that my involvements are collaborative in nature. He is put on to people by assignment. I work with people through friendship and through personal involvement. And the sort of major thrust of all of my work as a performer, as an artist, as a video person, is to collaborate with my friends.
Tell me about some of your projects.
Well, I do all kinds of things. You know, in mentioning that I'm being involved with my friends, for instance, a couple of the people that I'm involved with, a former student of mine by the name of Eric Metcalf, who also calls himself Dr. Brute, lives up in Vancouver. And Eric adopted what has to be the world's most banal motif, the leopard spot, and managed to turn it into the universal metaphor. Now, I've always been intrigued by his work, and he also makes his own saxophones out of wood, puts a kazoo in the top, paints it with his favorite motif, the leopard spot, and he plays absolutely unbelievable music.
Suppose someone were to say to you, that's silly, that's nothing. What does that mean, universal motif? That's big words to say to allow someone to play around.
That has been something leveled at many of the people that I do. I would have to say that something in common with a lot of the people that I work with is a certain sense of madness, of people who really are on the edge in a way, but I would say very much in control, who can craft that edge, who have insight into things that a lot of normal people generally don't perceive, and who have a way of articulating it in what I think is an entertaining and an enlightening kind of way.
What about the guy with the balloon? Tell me about that.
That's Bobby Miller. Bobby Miller is a farmer from Kansas. He farms 2,500 acres a week with his family, and he's also the 5th-ranked balloon pilot in the United States. I always wondered what people did out there in Kansas to get off, and I went out there and discovered there's plenty to do out there on the farm. In fact, I've had some of the best times on the road out there in Atwood, Kansas, northwest Kansas, just hanging out with Bobby Miller and the friends.
How do you pay for this enterprise?
Well, I paid for the enterprise initially. Like the way I got all this equipment is in a very good American tradition. I borrowed the money from the banks. And how I pay for it is, at this point, primarily through the performance, which I call the road show, which is this kind of continually evolving collection of experiences that I've had with my friends in the past 6 years on the road. And I travel throughout the year around colleges, primarily in the college circuit, sometimes galleries, nightclubs, and cabaret. And I earn a, I guess, legitimate and professional living from doing this performance.
What are you doing out here now? Are you working on a project?
Yes, I am. I've been out here for a couple of weeks, and I'm collaborating with a couple of old friends, Willie Boy Walker, who lives out in Oakland, who is a visual artist, writer, comedian, and Clayton Bailey, who is also known as Dr. Gladstone, who builds robots and collects Studebakers. And we are putting together a dramatic video production, which, if you can believe it, involves a scenario centered around a robot falling in love with a Studebaker.
Somehow, at this point, I believe it.
True.
Yes, master.
Who gave you permission to wash the car?
I find this body very stimulating.
In these 6 years of traveling around and making stories about people and showing those stories to other people, have you learned anything?
What I've learned is that this country is amazing, that it makes no difference where you go, whether it's Atwood, Kansas, or New York City, or any town here or there. There are wonderful things happening, wonderful people doing great things. This is, I think, why Charles Kuralt, for instance, has always been a hero of mine, because he searches out these things. And it's been my feeling that one of the most viable, interesting things that this country has to offer is the people that live here, and what they are doing. And it makes me feel good to be connected with that on a very much on a grassroots level, to collaborate with these people, to spend time. And of course, most importantly, I have the documents, I have the evidences of all these collaborations, the films, the videotapes, the stories, the slides, the music. It's all there. And I figure maybe when I'm 60 or 70 years old and can't drive anymore, and I'm sitting out on my front porch in Colorado, maybe my grandchildren will come up and they'll say, "Hey, Grandpa, how about that time when you were out in Kansas back in 1972 with Bobby and you went up in that parachute?" And I'll be able to go and I'll get out the slides and I'll play the song that I've written about Bobby, and, you know, I'll continue the role of a storyteller. I like that a lot.
Video scrapbook.
Video, it's a media scrapbook.
For the first time in your media career, would you like to throw it to a commercial?
Would I like to throw it to a commercial? Would I like to do commercial work?
Would you like to say, "Time for a commercial break, we'll be right back"?
Okay, it's time for a commercial break. We'll be right back.
You got a copy on me out there? How about it one time?